Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about books I've finished recently and future reading plans. So I'll start with the books that I've finished recently and then move into what I'm planning on reading. I'm very excited to share this beefy update with you. If you don't know already, I am posting 50 videos in 50 days and I'm very excited about it, and I'm really in the thick of it. This is going to be like video 15 or 16 or 17 depending on how things get edited and posted. So yeah, so if you're new to my channel, just know that I am Shelly and I love books and reading, and I would love for you to subscribe if you're enjoying the vibe. And without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. Also, I have a guest. Yes, Bubby. Let's start with Jane Austen July, in which I read Sense and Sensibility. This is my 5th Jane Austen major work out of the 6 that exist. And I have kind of a lot to say about it, though I'll in some ways keep it brief. So this is the story of sisters, and as a woman myself, I have sisters and they're great. So it was really interesting to read something that represented sisters, especially from Austen's perspective. She's got such a distinct voice, Austen does, that it's really interesting, like her take on certain things. And sisterhood was one that very much interested me, probably because of my own personal connection of having sisters. So we have Eleanor and Marianne, and Eleanor represents the sense. She's thoughtful and grounded and considerate, and she represents, I don't know, in a lot of ways she represents the logical side of somebody. And Marianne is very romantic. She is the emotional side. She is the sensibility of the pair. She's romantic and like weeps, she weeps when she's sad. She laughs when she's happy. You can tell when she's in love. She wears her heart on her sleeve. And so she's very much the polar opposite of Eleanor. And in a lot of ways, Marianne was very immature and represented, for me at least, the younger side of myself. Like the one that was and still can be wildly romantic and just let the whims of my emotions take me here, there, and everywhere. And Eleanor represented, like, in some ways my older self, but like the older, more mature version of myself, and the person that I often strive to be a little more grounded, a little more thoughtful and considerate, and so on. That's just how I felt when I was reading it. What's interesting is that I was very, very familiar with this book. Of all of Jane Austen's works, the one that I have seen most on television is Sense and Sensibility with Kate Winslet and Emma Thompson. I know that movie pretty well, but I haven't seen it in a very long time. I have not watched that movie in probably 18 years, 20 years, something like that. So it's like I was reading it and then all of a sudden something would come to me and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's the villain or something, something like that. Or like, they don't end up together. And then remembering little bits and pieces as the story progressed. And it was also interesting, being the 5th work of Jane Austen's that I have read, I found this work the most sensational. Like there would be this like twist in the book, and it was very, very much like, I'm going to let you in on this gossipy secret in which it really changes and colors the character that you have known and perhaps liked, And I felt like when those moments were divulged, like when those like gossipy moments happened, it was just huge plot twist. And now I can see how restrained Pride and Prejudice is. Pride and Prejudice is an extremely restrained book. And so is Persuasion. It's just reined back in. There's less of these like gossipy sort of jaw-dropping moments in which like a character completely changes from one scene to the next. Like the way that we perceive the character as a reader. And so it was really interesting because in a lot of ways, this is a very immature novel for Jane Austen, in that like the plotting itself is not, I wouldn't say all over the map, it's just heavy-handed. And I can only see that now because I have read these novels, and I'm not saying that I didn't like it. That is not the takeaway. The takeaway is just that there was just like I guess like a heavy-handedness to it that I very much noticed. For example, at the very, very beginning, there was like she drops exposition. She's just like, here are the Dashwoods, there are the sisters and the mother. The brother promised them a bunch of money when their dad died, and he decides not to follow through on that promise, and now they're in financial straits. And she just like drops that information at the very beginning. And so you're kind of like slapped around with information, whereas like in Pride and Prejudice, it's so much more restrained. We slowly through time, through pages, through word count, understand that the Bennets, that there's all these daughters and they don't have a lot of money and they're trying to marry wealthy, and that this is a concern for their mother. And even though she gets to the point right away, it doesn't feel quite like she slapped you across the face with the information like in this book. So I thought it was really interesting. And so of the books, interesting, I feel like Emma and Sense and Sensibility are kind of at the bottom for me. Mind you, Jane Austen is a brilliant writer, so even a bad Jane Austen or a bottom ranking Jane Austen is still a very, very, very good book. But Emma and Sense and Sensibility are kind of at the bottom. Like, I can very much see their flaws. Then I would say Northanger Abbey. I really love the humor in that book because it's playing on Gothic writing, Gothic tropes, and I love the fact that the main character in Northanger Abbey, whose name eludes me right now, is very much feels like she is the heroine of her own novel. And that sort of, it's very much the Marianne in this book, where she's she is like swept away by her emotions, but there is something really funny about it as it's playing with Gothic tropes. And then I would say then Persuasion, and then Pride and Prejudice is my favorite. So that's kind of my loose ranking right now, but I think it could change. And I wanted to also just say that it is so amazing and so powerful that Jane Austen July has been going on for as many years as it has, and the consistency that these hosts, the consistency of our hosts, which I will leave everyone linked down below. Please follow if you don't follow these hosts already. But the consistency of this event is an annual reminder to read an amazing author. And there have been years, I think I've skipped 1 year where I didn't feel like I think necessarily, I don't even remember if I actually skipped 1 year or if I just pushed off my Jane Austen reading till December. I think that was it. I didn't actually read something in Jane Austen July, but I read Jane Austen later on, and it was a reread for me. But there is something about the consistency of this event to remind us to read this author. And there's so many readers out there, myself included, that are reading Jane Austen more than we thought we would. And I can say that from personal experience. And it is because of this consistency and the fact that this event shows up every year. And there is this gentle excitement and encouragement from the community to read Jane Austen that is just so amazing. And I just think it is phenomenal that these women, the hosts, have done such a great job keeping this event around and have encouraged readers in this way. I think it's made more of an impact than they even know, is what I'm trying to say. So I think I'm just also feeling very romantic right now about the booktube community. I'm feeling very Marianne. I'm feeling very Marianne, like my youth of being romantic and loving things. That's very much coming out with the booktube community lately, because I don't know, there's just something that I've been loving about it. So let's get to I think 3 reads that were 4 reads that I have pros and cons about. I guess Sense and Sensibility too had its own cons, but it's fine. We'll get there. So the next book was The Duchess of Bloomsberry Street by Helene Hanff, who wrote 84 Charing Cross Road, or really she compiled the letters that makes up the narrative of 84 Charing Cross Road. So this is 84 Charing Cross Road is the letters between Helene Hanff and a bookseller in London. And Helene Hanff is a television screenwriter, scriptwriter in New York. Very different personalities, and So this is Helene Hanff after years and years of corresponding with people connected to this bookshop that she ordered books from. She finally goes to 84 Charing Cross Road and sees the bookstore and meets the people that she has been corresponding with for years. And this is after 84 Charing Cross Road is published. And so she is treated like a queen or like a duchess, the Duchess of Bloomsberry Street. She just has so many people wanting to take her out to dinner, wanting to treat her, wanting to spend time with her. It's not just about treating her, it's about wanting her attention and wanting to spend time with her, which was wonderful. And so this is the diary of that period of time in which Helene goes to England. And it was good, but it was not nearly as good as 84 Charing Cross Road. I've read 84 Charing Cross Road twice. It is an extremely special book. There is something about the juxtaposition of a sort of like loudmouthy, over the top, very big, like larger than life personality of Helene Hanff, writing these letters that in stark contrast to Frank, who is this buttoned up, very proper bookseller. There was also this sense that they were talking about post-World War II London, England. And in some ways, the differences of the way that England was recovering from World War II and the rations that were happening, all of that. The things that were unavailable and the struggle that it was in England versus, Helene not having that struggle. I mean, she wasn't like this overly rich person, but there weren't rations in the United States, and there wasn't that kind of rebuilding struggle that England had. And so 84 Charing Cross Road not only captures a time period, but also a relationship that was incredibly special, in my opinion. And the Duchess of Bloomsbury Street, it was good. It was fine. You get more of Helene, who is sweet, and she's got her humor. There were some scenes that were very funny and enjoyable and kind of stuck with me. But overall, it's like 84 Charing Cross Road is way up here, and the Duchess of Bloomsbury Street is just like middle of the road. It's fine. If I read this, I would not seek out anything else by Helene Hanff. Whereas 84 Charing Cross Road makes me just love the correspondence of the world. I want more of that. There's just a deep appreciation for 84 Charing Cross Road that the Duchess of Bloomsbury Street did not bring out in me. So, I'm not mad that I read it. They're very, very different books. In spite of the fact that they're written by the same people, there's just a je ne sais quoi that the Duchess doesn't have versus 84 that does have it, like in spades, you know? So, there's that. Okay, we're gonna move on from that. Okay, I also read the 11th book in the Elizabeth George Inspector Linley series. So this is a series that Elizabeth George has been writing since 1988, and she's still, I think, coming out with new novels. And what is so amazing about it is that you love the main characters. There are, 6 or 7 main characters in this series, and you just love their dynamic and what they bring out in each other, and it's wonderful. In terms of characters, it is like super high ranking. So A Traitor to Memory, this 11th book, is over 1,000 pages. It's huge. It's a behemoth of a thing. And we are following Inspector Linley, who of course is trying to solve a murder with his hot mess of a sidekick, Barbara Havers. And there is this really wonderful, actually very much like Helene Hanff and Frank in 84 Charing Cross Road, Inspector Linley is very buttoned up, very together. He has his own demons that he struggles with, but he's very proper. He's very by the book, to the rules, that kind of thing. And Barbara Havers, she is a hot mess express. Very much kind of like Helene herself. She's a bit of a mess. She is driven by her emotions. And actually, we also see that very much in Sense and Sensibility. You have one that's like more logical, more put together, more just, grounded in a way. And then you get the other one who is just like sort of, you know, says things that you wish you could just stuff back inside your mouth and the moment didn't happen, and it's a little bit more difficult. So in this book, we had, you know, of course, the main murder mystery, but we're also in this like diary of somebody who's connected to the murder, and the diary is sort of playing out, and so that ends up being a huge component. And at no point did I get impatient, or did I get to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so wordy, which is a huge feat for the 1,000 page book. I will say though, my one main critique, like, it was a very satisfying book. It was a very awesome murder mystery. I really loved it. The only thing is that I wish there was more of our main characters. There were some side characters that we've known about that get developed a little bit. But ultimately, I was like, I want more Lindley. I want more Barbara Havers. I love their dynamic. And I love like all of the main characters that we see in every book. I love them. And so I love the books that Elizabeth George writes, where she gives us more of those main characters that we know and love. And in this one, we got more mystery. We got more of the murder mystery, the putting together of the pieces, which is still great. And she did a great job doing that. But we got less of like the people that we know and love. And I am such a character-driven reader that I wanted more of that. So, there was that. I was shocked when I went back and looked, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's 1,000 pages. It really didn't feel like it, which is a feat, by the way. The next book I finished was Cesaly by Annie Garthwaite, which was a buddy read between Charlotte and I. Charlotte has the channel Coiny Reads. And Cesaly was interesting because it is about the wife of Richard, Duke of York, who is a supporter of a very weakling King Henry during the Plantagenet period. And I think the most poignant note, or like the most important note about this Plantagenet period, is who has claim to the throne. And so legitimacy is a huge player in this time period. This was interesting because Cesaly, she's a fascinating character. She's vicious and I don't know, emotional, and very there were times where she was kind of like, not cruel, but she had this fire in her that just burned brightly, right? And so I found the character of Cesaly very interesting, and I thought that Annie Garthwaite was actually pretty good at writing action. However, because we're following a woman in this period, she does not see a lot of action on the battlefield. A lot of her action is in the home, childbirth, and dealing with, you know, infant mortality, and going through that. There was also just like jealousy and competitiveness in the court in this British court, and her husband is getting sent to France and herself and to Ireland to stabilize the people there and continue the rule of the British in those places. And so there's all this stuff going on. What was interesting, though, is that a lot of it is reported to Cesaly, because she's not on the battlefield. So it's like her husband goes, and then someone, whether it be her husband or someone else, will come back and report as to what happened. And so I think that pacing-wise, that kind of threw things off for me. But I did really enjoy Cesaly as like this character that did burn quite bright. And then we had the question, and I want to know from you all what you think. We had the question of, Charlotte and I discussed, do you read about the person? Like, do you read about Cesaly before you actually read the book? Or do you let the author tell you the story? I would say 99% of the time, I would say that I let the author tell me the story. I don't learn about the people before I read about them. And so I kind of broke that rule as I was like nearing the last 50 pages of this book. I was like, oh, surely I can look up Cesaly now. And I feel like it kind of spoiled things for me. There were things that I knew, and then there was things that I had suspected as to where Annie Gerthwaite was going to stop this book, and like at what point, at like what peak she was going to decide to end it. And I was right. So in a weird way, I spoiled myself for the ending by reading the Wikipedia entry about Cesaly. And so do you read about the person before reading the book, or as you're reading the book? I try not to do that. I really try not to do that, because I think in a lot of ways, some of the surprises, some of the twists are the best when you don't know. I don't know, but the more I read, the more I learn about different historical periods, the less likely I am that I'm going to go into something not knowing the plot. So the longer I live my life, the more, like, so the shorter the runway is of that I'm going to go into a book not knowing what happens, I suppose. Not saying that I'll know everything about history or whatnot, but like, for example, if I read another account of Cesaly, I'll know about her and about her life. So I don't know. I feel very mixed about that. Meaning, like, the more I read, the more I'm going to, like, spoil myself for future books. So is it really a spoiler? I don't know. I struggle with that. So I think about that. And I'm thinking about that now. But for the most part, I don't read anything about the historical person until after I've read the book. And I would say, for certain, with Angahard Hampshire's The Mare, which I finished and talked about in other videos, that do not read anything about Hermione Brunsteiner until you've read The Mare. Unless you don't plan on reading The Mare, and then do read whatever you want. But if you're planning on reading The Mare, do not look up Hermione Brunsteiner until afterwards, because it will, I think, really take the air out of some of the tension in that book. So there's that. I think, and I also finished, the last book I finished was GloriousExploits by Fredia Lennon. This was an interesting book. So in this book, we're following Lampo, and he and a friend are wanting to put on Medea and the Ladies of Troy, the Women of Troy, these two plays. And so they get these prisoners, the Athenian prisoners, to perform these plays. And so it's a lot of it, the majority of the story is about them becoming directors. And as a director, you need funding, you need costume design, you need mask makers, and you need to rehearse with your actors and casting correctly and all of that. And so a lot of the story is that putting together of a production. And recently I had the privilege to be in and be a part of putting together a production of The Sound of Music. So being with this character, I listened to this book, so listening to this character talk about the different processes of putting together this play felt very familiar and felt very, it felt kind of wonderful considering this experience that I just had. However, I mentioned it in a different video, and I'll mention it here, that I feel like Fredia Lennon, who is the narrator of the audiobook, does put a lot of character, inflection and jovialness into the main character, the main narrator of Lampo, that I don't think he necessarily wrote into the story. And so I took issue with that I think actually reading the book and listening to Fredia Lennon's reading of his own book is going to actually be a very, very different experience for the person consuming this story. And, you would hope that the interpretation of a book is going to be very, very close to how you would read it on the page. Like perhaps the actor or the narrator sort of maybe makes things a little more bright and lively. But there are times where I've read a book and I feel like my imagination is so much more vibrant than the narrator. And so there is a little bit of a difference, but it shouldn't be a big difference. Like the chasm should be kind of closed because you're using the same material in order to inform the performance, whether it be the performance that you're creating in your mind or the performance that the reader is creating for the listener. And I felt like Fredia Lennon very much added a lot of emphasis that I didn't hear on the page. Like there would be times where Lampo was chuckling, and yet in the narrative, it didn't say that Lampo chuckled. And so I was very questioning of that. Now, it made a great audiobook. And it was really fun, especially the play. Now, near the end, I think things just got away from Ferdia Lennon. I just think that things, I don't know. I think it just went beyond what the story needed to be. I kind of wish it ended with the performance, but yet there was still, I don't know, like an hour of listening after the performance that I don't know, I didn't feel like needed to be there. Now, maybe that's me. I know people love this book, and so I feel shy about critiquing it in any way. But yeah, I was kind of like, and I also thought the most telling line was that Lampo himself played the fool. And sometimes he wasn't as foolish as the person that he is like performing as. My camera battery died. As I was trying to say, that sometimes the character of the fool, who I actually really enjoy reading books from that perspective, if it's done really well, is that they are the most truthful and honest of everybody in the book, because they see things that they don't normally see, and yet they still kind of maintain their persona as like the fool, right? So I thought it was interesting. I'm walking away with it with very mixed feelings. So there's that. And then in terms of future plans, with my friend Fraser, we're reading a Brightness Long Ago, a Guy Gabriel Kay book, which has started off kind of brutal, but also the brutality is like sucking me in and getting me invested, which I think is a, great trick or a great writing technique for this author. It's historical fantasy. So, we'll see about that. We'll see how I get along with that. I haven't read very many of those. And then let's think. I'm also reading Prep by Curtis Sittenfeld, and I'm reading that with my friend Anita. And this is my second Curtis Sittenfeld book. And what's funny is that it's very much reminding me of like late 90s, early 2000s shows about a female protagonist going to college for the first time, but our main protagonist is going to like an elite high school, I believe. So that's interesting, but it's reminding me of like Felicity, which I really loved. I can't think of another one. So it's reminding me of that. Sort of like awkward girl going off to college for the first time, or going off on her own for the first time in an academic setting and having really awkward moments that she has to like work through. Of course, I'm like early days in both these books, so I don't really know how it's gonna go. I did finish Sugar Daddy by Lisa Kleypas, which was a contemporary romance that had two male potentials, one of which was an enemies to lovers situation, and the other one was like second chance romance. So which one is she going to end up with? Which was really fun and worked really well for me. So I think I'm excited about Lisa Kleypas. So I started Suddenly You, which is an enemies to lovers Regency romance, and I'm really enjoying that. I kind of gobbled up Sugar Daddy, and so to me Suddenly You is taking a little bit longer, and there's a little more of like a stop and start for me, but I'm still really enjoying it. And I don't think my relationship with Lisa Kleypas will be over after this book. I think I will continue to read her stuff. And then I've been doing a lot of thinking about mammoths. And so I kind of came up, there was like, I've been talking about mammoths on my channel. I want to read a mammoth, blah, 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 all the things, right? And so I came up with two books, The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope and Dex Newberry Port by Lisa Ellman. And it was funny because I texted Steve Donahue, as one does, and I was like, I've been thinking about mammoths. Here are a list of mammoths. I don't know where to start. I didn't exactly ask him necessarily where to start, but I think I asked around the question of like, if you want to tell me where to start, I would definitely take some advice. And like, immediately, like 2 seconds later, he was like, The Way We Live Now, which is, I didn't even show you the front, The Way We Live Now. And then we got talking about Trollope a little bit, and texted a little bit about Trollope, and I've not read The Magic of Trollope yet. And so now I'm in like the 4th chapter of this book, very early days. A lot of these books I'm just starting, so, take that with what you will. But the way we live now, I'm starting, and I think I want to read this in earnest, meaning that I don't want it to drag on and on forever and ever until like it feels like I've been reading this for the better part of my young life. I really want to get through this. And so this is, I don't know, this is close to 800 pages. It's like 760 pages. And it's about a family, the Cadbury family, I think they're called. And the mother is a writer, and she has 2 children. The one that she favors is her son, and the one that she ignores is her daughter. And her son is a devious human being, and her daughter is very sweet. And I think that it's going to be about their story, although the main character is supposed to be, I forget. The main character is, no. Oh, gracious. Melmont, a financier of uncertain origins. So yeah, I'm excited. There is something very friendly about Trollope's tone. So I think I'm going to start and really start reading this in earnest amid all my other reads. Meaning I don't want it to last like months and months and months. And then very, very slowly, sort of when I have time, and hopefully I'll finish before the end of the year, I'll read Dex Newberry Port, because I started it and I'm enjoying being in the mind of the narrator. It also is stream of consciousness, so you very much feel like you're in the mind of the narrator. She feels very familiar. Her mind is quite anxious and jumps around from here, there, and everywhere. And it feels a bit like my own. I won't say like for sure like my own, but it doesn't feel very far off from my own. But I'm also just finding this very interesting. I don't know if it's because of the style, but it feels like a book you can very much dip in and out of. We're going to really test that, okay? Because I don't think I will finish it before like December. And nor am I going to really try to. I don't know. We will see. So I have these behemoths on the go, and I am enjoying what I'm reading, which isn't that how it's supposed to be. So yeah, let me know. What are you reading? Love all the comments, reading comments, chats. Love to talk about what's going on in your own reading lives. It's like I shared, I want you to share now, please. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. I appreciate you immensely. You have no idea how much I appreciate you, and I hope to see you all in my next one. Bye!